Good to have you with us. The reason we had to move to that is there's sometimes a broadcasting bracket that we had to try and get the guest in, so I appreciate you sitting through that. It was not to take away, of course, Anelia, which is why you're here to talk to me, that it was this day in 1985, to remind viewers, the US government approved a blood test, which we now know to be more commonly known as an HIV blood test. But it was yesterday, Zero Discrimination Day, the 1st of March. Good to have you with us from the TAC. Do you think there really is a zero discrimination and a zero discrimination day? We hope so, of course.
Firstly, thanks for inviting us to come here and share our views with the viewers and the people of the country. I can say on paper, all these good things, they do appear. Zero discrimination, zero what, but on the ground, they do not. So we are living in a country where we have leaders who indicates to the left, yet they are going to the right. Let's take a typical example here in Gauteng. The government of Gauteng, on the 10th of February, issued a circular, which is called Circular 005 of 2019. What is this circular saying? This circular is actually excluding people who are non-citizens of South Africa from accessing primary health care within our healthcare facilities without paying upfront. So that is a discrimination. That is equal to apartheid. Because in South Africa, firstly, not long ago, Minister of Health, Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, is the one who also went publicly to a conference of one of the healthcare workers' unions to say the reason that the healthcare system of South Africa is overcrowded is because it is being overcrowded by foreign nationals. But we must ask ourselves, what does the Constitution of South Africa say? The Constitution of South Africa does not talk about some, it talks about all. But also on top of that, the same government, the same Minister of Health is advocating for NHI, whose pillars are formed under the universal health coverage. When you talk about the universal health coverage, there are a couple of things that you need to address. Firstly, it says access to healthcare services without discriminating someone based on gender, color, creed, nationality, and all what have you. So if the minister is talking about the NHI and then the Gauteng government is excluding foreign nationals, what does it mean? It is a contradiction. The same government of South Africa subscribes to the Agenda 2030, which talks about sustainable development goals. Goal number 3 of sustainable development goals talks about good health and well-being. So if now you've got all these laws, all these good documents and the Constitution, and then you do something that is contrary to that, what do we call that? That is discrimination. So it still exists in South Africa.
So even as we sit and discuss Zero Discrimination Day, we're not even going to discuss what is happening out on the streets as far as discrimination. We'll get to that in a moment, I'm sure. We're going from the very top down, aren't we? There's still discrimination from those who are meant to not discriminate and put laws into place. So it's a complete failure by government. Have you spoken to them? What do they say to you? How do we get to this point? Exactly what you just explained to me. How did we get here?
So that's why you have social movements that are grounded, whose responsibility is to always remind those in power as to say, remember, we've got the Constitution. The Constitution says 1, 2, 3, 4. But in many times, when the politicians are held accountable by ordinary citizens, they take issues personal and start calling you names that you are a counter-revolutionary, you are a turncoat, you are bought, and all what have you, because they don't want to be held accountable. We cannot have a Constitution that was adopted by the country, and then one individual or few individuals, because it suits them, they want to amend it in legal corners. No, we cannot allow that. So that's why, if it means that we need to, we are engaging the Director General to say, Director General of Health, can you engage with Gauteng? We are going to engage with the MEC of Health in Gauteng. We are going to reach out to the minister, because if we allow this to happen in Gauteng, it will spread like a virus to all provinces. So we need to stop it as it starts. If they don't want to heed to our call, we will take it to the streets and to the courts of law.
How do you hold the politicians accountable, the political parties, the governments, the lawmakers, as we now enter this election cycle? I ask the question because many people and many political analysts will argue that what people are going to hear now in the build-up to May 8th, Anele, is exactly what the politicians want them to hear. Everything's going to be fine. We're going to address all of your issues, financial, infrastructure, education, and health, of course. And that wasn't in the priority order. It was just mentioning titles. How are you going to now make sure that these promises that these politicians make between now and May 8th actually come true? Because you're clearly very angry. How are you going to hold them accountable as the TAC?
You know, to politicians, the election time, it's like Christmas. Ne? They like to, you know, in Christmas, you buy everything for children because you've got a bonus. So that's what happens to politicians. It's easy for them to commit themselves on what the people want on the ground, because in return, they want you to vote them in order they retain the power. That's why at this time, as the progressive people on the ground who sees this violation, we need to stand up, mobilize, hold the politicians accountable. And when we engage with them, we need to put down clear time frames and clear demands as to say, from this time to this time, we want this. If you don't do this, we're not going to do this as well. What is going to happen? At the end of the day, they will be caught on their knees. They will be forced to heed to the call of the people.
And it's very rare where you and I are able to sit and have a conversation around timelines, because politicians will pull those timelines out, and for various reasons we haven't hit those marks. 2030 is coming up. Many critics will say we've already missed 2030 and we're still 11 years away. But you have such a definitive timeline, don't you, Anele? You have the 8th of May. So politicians watching this show right now, you're talking to them and people on the ground. You have until the 8th of May to do what? What are you telling politicians you need and that you want, or if they don't, what's going to happen?
The politicians, all of them, they have until the 8th of May to listen to the people. They have until the 8th of May to address the basic needs of people. People, when it comes to health, they don't access adequate healthcare services. In education, our education is in a mess. In terms of unemployment, the majority of the people are unemployed. In terms of gender-based violence, our sisters and mothers are murdered every day and night. The politicians are not doing anything. We're talking about issues of housing. We're talking about issues of shelter and the well-being of the individuals, including the constitutional rights of the people. So if the politicians, they keep on making this rhetoric, we won't listen to them again. That's why they need to man up and woman up and make sure that the basic needs are addressed. Like, for instance, when it comes to health, we are saying to the governing party and all politicians, they need to freeze all the frozen posts within our healthcare system before the 8th of May. They need to make sure that our clinics are improved before the 8th of May. They need to ensure that we've got an anti-corruption unit within the healthcare department to fight with corrupt officials and politicians like Brian Hlongwa and Qedani Mahlangu. So if these demands and other demands are not met, then it means we will have another engagement with politicians as to say, how are we addressing these issues?
We've spoken a lot about the political side of this, and it hinges on everything, not to take away from that at all. So yes, there was this Zero Discrimination Day, as you've been very clear on this, and earlier, it's been a complete failure from government and the health department's perspective. Yesterday was meant to celebrate those who have HIV and AIDS, are willing to fight for their right to dignity and their right to healthcare. Was yesterday a day to celebrate it all, Zero Discrimination Day? I want to move away from the politics for a moment. Talk to me about the people on the ground that are fighting with HIV, AIDS. Are they getting some kind of victory over the past decade or two?
Truth must be told. The situation in South Africa in our days is not like yesteryears where there was no access to antiretroviral. Like in those days, it was estimated that between 2000 and 2005, it was estimated that about 330,000 people in the country lost their lives. But now in the country, we've got about 4.5 million people who are on antiretroviral treatment, and yet on the other hand, we've got an estimated number of about another 3 million that is not initiated on treatment. Let's look now on those who are on treatment. What are the challenges? Not everybody within this 4.5 million is still on treatment. Many of them are missing on treatment because they don't feel the dignity we're talking about. They feel discriminated. One, the nature of our clinics is too small. There is no privacy where people will get a proper counseling and testing on HIV and AIDS, where people will be able to be themselves and express themselves. There is no privacy, but also in terms of confidentiality. The nurses who are working in our clinics are people that we know. The fact that a nurse knows about your HIV status does not give the nurse a right to go and gossip about your HIV status to someone. These are some of the things that chase people away from the clinics.
People are too scared.
Yes, the attitude of the nurses to people in clinics is what makes people to run away from the clinic. So if we don't address those issues, because those issues, they speak to discrimination, they speak to stigma, they speak also to a question of human dignity. So if we don't address these issues, we will always, in South Africa as it stands, the Americans are angry, PEPFAR is angry about how we perform as South African government. Because PEPFAR is saying, South Africa, you are initiating too many people on antiretroviral treatment. You're putting them on treatment. You're testing too many people. But also, on the other hand, too many people are missing up on treatment. So at which stage as the country are we not going to be in a position of chasing numbers, but focus on quality, address issues of the broken healthcare system, address issues of staff attitude, because at times we must not blame the nurses. Because of the shortage of human resource in our clinics and hospitals, some of the nurses and healthcare workers are overburdened. So now where do they vent their anger? They vent their anger to the patients. That's why we are saying government, employ more doctors, employ more nurses, improve the working conditions of the doctors, so that if we've got health workforce that is motivated, it means at the end they will provide quality healthcare services to the users.
Just before I ask us to wrap up the conversation, and I want to come back to this worrying topic. You raised it right in the beginning of our conversation, 10th of Feb, the publication of a document for foreigners in South Africa and public health care. We've spoken about the nursing issue, we've spoken about the privacy, we've spoken about government's failure for its own people. Just take me back to this issue on the 10th of Feb. How is this going to be addressed, that foreign nationals and access to South Africa's public health care system? Where are we on that? How do you fight that?
One, that is a gross violation of the constitution of the land. But also,
some would say even human rights.
Yes, because one, you cannot say health is a fundamental human right. So this declaration is not only coming from South Africa, it's coming from global. So who is the Gauteng government to take a unilateral decision and to amend the constitution of our country? It means if they are doing this, they are inviting a fight between themselves as the violators of the Constitution and us as the defenders of the Constitution. We are not going to rest. We will take it to the streets. We will take them to courts of law. We will interdict them not to proceed with this until this matter has been addressed by the court of law, because we are not scared of them, because they are not above the Constitution.
Anele, thank you for coming in to speak to us. I appreciate your time in coming in to speak to us this evening. We were talking about Zero Discrimination Day, but as you can hear, there's clearly a lot more involved than celebrating Zero Discrimination Day. For those with HIV and AIDS, and fighting for their rights and dignity is a much, much bigger issue. And of course, we are going to pick up on what happened as far as Anele is concerned with the Gauteng government on the 10th of February.